All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be answering all sorts of hot nonsense from the Patreons. Lots of gems, lots of who's you're seeing, and just a few amorous ninjas. Let's get to it.
And every day, I practice martial arts. Watch out!
Yo, Dre, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Sifu. How are you?
I'm doing well. Here we are in another elongated table episode of the KFG.
Elongated table episode.
You know, you two need to really get over that. You know what I'm saying? For
Get
the
over
sake
what?
of...
No, it's weird because if we were not recording this podcast and I was talking to Dre this far, it would feel weird. It'd be like, yo, boy, like, why don't you sit over here? Like, why are you all the way over there?
We're used to being closer.
Closer
than close.
Look at it this way. I'm doing you both a favor for professional reasons.
I think it's
you know
Mikey.
what I mean?
He's trying to get in between, and he wants to create space in between.
Yeah, I think he's
us.
trying to create friction between the two of us. Yeah.
Good.
You know what? I'm going to do something right in
likes
front
the
of your
friction.
camera, right? Because we just discussed this, and I'm going to do this right now. Watch this. Everyone, you're going to see this. Don't edit this out, Andrew. Oh, look at that. Let's have the mic just right in front of him a little bit. Hey, look, see?
my God.
How nice am I? If you're going to lean there like some kind of like budget male model, right?
Budget male model.
Like, hey, how you doing? Look at me leaning on the table and being
This is
super
comfortable.
cool. At least then let's have
This
the
is how
mic
I'm
so I can
comfortable.
actually hear you.
I like to be
know?
comfortable.
Why do I have the
podcast.
impression that at some point in his life, Mikey was a budget male model?
At some point, I am right now. I still haven't been paid.
Oh God! Oh God!
Well, here we are for another episode of the Kung Fu Genius. We are doing an Ask Me Anything episode.
Ask
we have a
me
Patreon
anything.
question and I think one YouTube member question.
Oh, yes.
So, but before we get started, just want to remind everyone that the best way to support the Kung Fu Genius is on Patreon, patreon.com/the Kung Fu Genius for access to episodes early for as little as $5. You get all that, Instagram subscriber reels, and all sorts of extra goodies. If you don't want to support us on Patreon, you can support us right here on YouTube with memberships. You can see all that information below. And Dre, so let's, what you got for
Let's
me?
get right into it.
Mhm.
First off, I got Martin Pravix.
All right, fantastic.
And he says, "Hi, KFG. What is the hardest part in the classic HKWT system?"
Dealing with Sifu Learning. What's the next question? Oh, wait, that was it. I suppose I need to expand upon
answer
that.
You can't say
looking
funny
for.
shit while I'm drinking coffee. It's not fair.
Got it.
We're not going
Frothy
there.
coffee.
We're not going there.
All right.
You're lucky you didn't get a whole splurt along your long table.
Wow.
He's not asking the obvious. He's asking for more of an in-depth answer.
The hardest part of the Hong Kong system.
Right.
So what if you could transport back in time for a front row seat into the life and legacy of one of the most respected Wing Chun masters in history? Gong Sao Wong, a tribute direct students on Sifu Wong So Leung, offers you just that. Through a series of exclusive conversations, 25 direct students share anecdotes, reflections, and personal stories offering in-depth understanding of the man behind the legend. Order your copy today across 12 Amazon marketplaces with free shipping. I absolutely love this book, and I think you'll find it an indispensable part of your collection. I can't recommend it enough. Get yours today. Go to Amazon, type in Gong Sao Wong, and there you go.
Well, I mean, everyone's experience is going to be unique because, you know, if you are a dedicated martial artist or whatever your style is or whatever your craft is, I suppose it's difficult to quantify things as being difficult because it's how you frame it, right? So if something is difficult for me, I just view it as a challenge that I need to overcome. I don't view it as like an obstacle that like, oh, this is difficult. And because my motivation for doing Wing Chun, especially in those days when I was converting from the kind of European style to the Hong Kong style, well, my motivation was very high. I had the chance to learn from Sifu Leung Ting. So the idea that if there were things that were difficult, I didn't frame them that way because it's not like, it's one thing if a class in high school is difficult, you have to take that class. It's another thing if your elected martial art of choice that is also your job has some difficult elements to it. It's not the same framing. You see what I mean? For me, I think the hardest and most challenging thing about learning the Hong Kong system was learning Guo Sao, was learning Chi Sao sparring, because we did not We did not learn that in the European system. Of course, they had what was called free chi sao. You just start in pun sao, try to slap each other and try to hit each other using your movements. I mean, there's always that. But the specific methodology of Hong Kong guo sao, how this is built, the whole da lat sao, the hitting and the going back and forth, trying to get the rear arm and keeping constant pressure, and that ability to turn the chi sao into something slightly chaotic, because I think what happens to a lot of Wing Chun people, not just from my own lineage, but from many lineages, is that they're trying to establish a rule set of chi sao that's so narrow that really only their lineage stays in this lane, and it allows them to do things that look really spectacular and cool because they're like in a self-contained system where everyone kind of knows what the other person is doing, and then you get really into like a very incestuous and very kind of walled garden way of looking at things, and they try to make everything look really clean and really, really smooth, which is cool. I mean, I'm all for doing things with high quality and a high degree of technical accuracy, but the truth is that when it comes to fighting, when it comes to someone trying to, as Bruce Lee would say, do you in, the primary concern is not that everything looks clean and smooth, okay? And I think that that's sometimes where Wing Chun people, maybe in my own lineage, if we do like a certain chi sao pattern or section or whatever they call that, and you can do it with a partner who also knows it, and you can do it fast, and you can add variations and stuff that looks really spectacular and really cool. But when you are applying this in a practical situation, your opponent doesn't know Wing Chun, and your opponent also doesn't even necessarily want to stick with you.
Right.
Your opponent might just pull their arms with you. And I'm like, well, why are you touching my arms? Like, get out, and they're trying to try to punch you around there, right? So that means you have to learn to adapt your chi sao.
Could be jarring
yes.
for an opponent.
Yes.
In real time.
Yeah. So you have to adjust your idea to be able to work with a non-compliant opponent, someone who's not trying to play your game, someone who is just moving around your arms or moving around the way you move. And that is the methodology of the guo sao or the lat sao in the Leung Ting system. And it can get a little grimy and a little chaotic, but you have to learn how to manage that. Because if you just want to practice chi sao within a very narrow definition of what that is, where everyone kind of knows the rules and we kind of got you, okay, we're done, hit you, got you, holding you, touching you, and then you have to stop. Whereas in a practical situation, if I got you or I even have my hand on your neck, well, the other guy can still fire a punch at me. The other guy can still try to grab me. It doesn't go, oh, okay, you got me, I concede, and we're going to reset. There's too much of this kind of like, okay, I got you, so in a real fight, you would be dead. Yeah, sometimes in a demonstrational way, that might make sense. But when you're actually sparring, you have to understand that the best martial artist out there is still going to get hit from time to time. And it's about minimizing how many times you get hit. And if you do get hit, minimizing the amount of damage that hit does by turning what would be a direct shot maybe into a glancing blow instead of a direct blow, right? And this is partially what we're trying to do when we do full-on chi sao sparring. The ideal is obviously that we can stick, smother, and avoid any contact with our opponent's strikes to our body. But the reality is when your opponent is really aggressively coming at you, they're not attacking you as your student or as your training partner, they're really, really coming at you, then you're going to need to make sure that you practice it in a way where you can handle that kind of pressure, right? And so when I first came to the States, or back, I should say, from Europe in 2002, kind of my first year teaching, I was still very much teaching what I had learned in Europe, which was the kind of the old program EWTO style, the old Latzel program, the old kind of traditional European way of doing things, right? And of course, it was quite successful. It was a very good program. But then I started to take lessons directly from Sifu Leung Ting.
Right.
And he started to kind of change how I looked at things.
What was that time frame? So you got back. Did you open and then start learning from Sifu Leung Ting, or did you start with?
I started.
and then
I came back. I came back from Germany at like the first week of June, 2002,
Yes. Okay,
and then first week of July, I already started teaching.
got it.
I got a dance studio in Manhattan.
Okay,
So I was back in the States for less than a month when I got a dance studio, renting twice a week in Manhattan, and I got like I was teaching. My parents had a big basement at their house in Connecticut,
right.
and I
remember you telling me that.
converted it into like a little training gym,
So-
and I taught privately there. So because it's my parents' house, I had to like I can't just like open for business. So I would like vet people coming in, and so I just teach privately in Connecticut, but openly I teach in New York.
You were doing those at the same time.
Yeah, those at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had like a group of students in Connecticut and a group of students in New York City,
I see.
and that's how I started. And then the first seminar I had with Sifu Leung Ting was at the end of 2002.
Okay.
It was like October, November already. So it was just a few months after I started teaching. He taught a seminar in Boston. At that time, there was a small Wing Chun group there. It was under Sifu Jeff Webb, who was one of the managers of the association at that time. So he had a group out there. And they had a few students, and they had invited Sifu Leung Ting.
So you acquired enough cash to hire Leung Ting.
No. I went to his seminar in Boston.
Okay,
So they were the ones hosting him. So I just paid for the seminar and went.
gotcha.
I didn't quite have enough students to have him at my school yet.
I see.
But Boston's not that far. So I was able to drive there. That was really interesting because it was the first time I had trained with a bunch of the American trained WT guys.
Got it.
Because obviously when I was in Europe at the castle, I was trained with EWTO people from all the various European countries. And I had seen Sifu Leung Ting in many seminars, had gone to many seminars with Sifu Imin Bostepe. And of course, I had seen all the various European masters during those 3 years. But I had not like really trained with a lot of like American WT
When
guys.
he saw you in Boston, did he say, this guy? Did he know who you were?
I don't think he remembered me. No.
Okay.
No, because you have to imagine in Europe, when he taught a seminar, there'd be 100 to 300 people maybe in a seminar.
Right.
And then he would do a bunch of seminars in like he would do like a 3 or 4 week tour. So, he would see my face as like some nameless guy in the audience, and then like would see me in Berlin, and then didn't see me for like another year.
Okay.
No, at that time, I would be very shocked if he remembered who I was at that time. Wow. I didn't expect him to remember who I was. So it doesn't bother. I'm not like, he didn't remember me or whatever. I don't know. I kind of laugh when people get upset about that. Like someone who meets hundreds of people a month, saw you a year ago, and you're upset they don't remember you.
Yeah.
All right. This kind of
I
like
see hundreds of people a day.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I bet you get upset about that though, right?
No, I couldn't.
No,
Yeah.
because we both worked in nightlife. I used to have people come up to me in the club all the time and go, well, you remember me from last week, and I'd be like, no.
Yeah, no, because it happens.
And
to
they
me.
get so bent out of
Yeah.
shape.
Yeah. It's like people. It's like people might as well say, that I'm the main character of the universe, right?
Your universe.
So anyway,
yeah.
no, I mean, it wasn't like that. But I was used to training with like EWTO peeps, and at that time at the castle, those were like the hardcore EWTO guys, because those are the guys who are training 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. They weren't like the more casual guys who just go to a Wing Chun school twice a week. These are like, I train with a lot of hardcore people. We get punched. I hit that. We just keep going. Like, we don't get upset, right? It's just like, we're all just there all the time beating the shit out of each other. And it wasn't that big of a deal. But then I came to the States, and the States was a weird place because you had kind of almost 2 camps of WT in the U.S. By the late 90s. Because Sifu Imin Bostepe, he was the chief instructor for Leung Ting's Wing Chun through what was at that time called the AWTO from sometime in the early to mid 90s
American.
until he left in 2001. Okay. So, for 7, 8 years, he was the chief instructor for the US. And then because of politics, this, that, and whatever thing, he decided to leave in 2001. And then some schools stayed with Imin and some schools stayed with Sifu Leung Ting. So it was kind of like a little bit of a schism, at least in the US. it was a bigger deal in the U.S. because Emin was the chief instructor for Leung Ting in the U.S., whereas in Europe he wasn't. He was just an instructor from Europe. But because when he left the U.S. Association, there were people who were like Team Emin, and there were people who just wanted to stay with Leung Ting, right? So and a lot of the people who stayed with Emin were the people who kind of came up through him, whereas the older guard who didn't originally start with Sifu Emin, they stayed with Leung Ting. Okay. So what ended up happening is you had kind of like two groups of WT of Leung Ting Wing Chun in the US. You had the people who had like trained in Emin's generation.
Oh, right.
Like, I don't mean his generation. I mean, like they learned from him.
Yeah.
And they were doing like his program. And then before Emin came in the mid 90s, Sifu Leung Ting already was teaching in the US. He came around, I think 79 was his first trip. And then he taught people like Keith Sonnenberg and those guys in the early 80s. And then so I
kind of remember a video where he was being interviewed, and I think it was in Central Park. Or it was in
that was the late 80s. That was later. I'm talking about right at the beginning. He had a couple students here in the US, in Texas,
so
and Arizona. Yes.
Okay.
And Montana. So he had a few students here. But he was doing it a little bit differently than he did it in Europe. He was doing these things called condensed courses, which I had talked about before, which is basically he would come in for like a few weeks and then he would do like a big info dump on the students who were at the seminar, and he would show them way more than you would reasonably want to learn in a 1 to 2 week time period.
Oh, God. But
the idea would be that then they would, Rocky montage the shit out of what they learned until he came the next time. Mm-hmm. But he had bad luck in the US. I think with the exception of the late Steve Brandon, who at that time, really seemed to train hard. Most of his US students were kind of hobbyists. So you didn't have someone in the US like he had Sifu Kenspecht in Europe, who was like hardcore into the martial art, but also someone who could promote it and build it and had a brain.
Business mind.
In the US, he had a bunch of hobbyists who were kind of maybe mildly into Wing Chun because of the Bruce Lee connection. Mm-hmm. But they were not like the go-getters who are going to go out there and train like maniacs and build those schools, because they didn't have any big schools at that time. And you can even look in the old Dynamic Wing Chun book and look at the group photos from the 80s from Europe, which is like, tons of students, big seminar. And then you would look at his US seminars, and it would be like single digit attendance. And also what was a huge stark contrast between his American seminars in the 80s and his European seminars in the 80s was, and I know that a lot of martial artists have mixed feelings about these things, but it's just something to pay attention to. The European group, they all had uniforms. They all had the Leung Ting uniform. The instructors had the uniform. It was very professional. And the US guys, Sifu Leung Ting is sitting in his uniform. He's got 1 or 2 technicians in a uniform.
And then everyone
and the
else.
Dudes in the back, jeans, t-shirt, sweatpants. I remember, I'll never forget one. I mentioned it early on when we talked about this in like season 1. There's a group photo. I think it's in Arizona or Texas. And there's a dude in the group photo with Sifu Leung Ting, an Asian guy, and he's wearing a t-shirt that says "Property of the Nut Factory." and I just, the funny thing is, he's just like some goofy dude who went to a seminar, right? Yeah. But that picture just shows you already, like, the European guys, they were like serious, they were organized, they were professional, and they trained hard. And the American guys were a bunch of kind of hobbyists in jeans, like, oh yeah, cool. This is Leung Ting, some guy who trained with Yip Man. That's the guy who taught Bruce Lee. Cool, yeah, I'll check it out. Right, and you just had a way more casual, way less interested vibe. So yes,
I was going to say, I guess if they're wearing jeans, and because obviously Wing Chun doesn't have any high kicks, I guarantee none of those jeans were the Chuck Norris, action jeans, right?
Action jeans.
Also, I don't know when the action jeans first came out. I think action jean.
Well, sure maybe by the early 80s.
Early 80s. Yeah, it could have been action jeans.
Didn't Brett Favre come out with a version of action jeans?
You always bring up these sport references.
Why are you bringing up Brett Favre?
Which is like the most, like, you might as well be talking about, I don't know, like microsurgery on hands.
It might have been an SNL skit.
Okay.
those jeans.
Are you having one of those moments where you're remembering things
No,
that didn't really exist?
I swear Brett Favre had
So for
some
some-
Wranglers. Brett Favre did a Wrangler commercial, but SNL made fun of it with these jeans.
For someone
I
that
think.
doesn't smoke weed or do hallucinogenic, he is out there.
Yeah. Also, like 80% of our audience is European, so I'm sure they're all excited about Brett Favre. All right. All right. Yes. Let's hit him.
Favre.
Let's hit him with the references that really stick at home, right?
man.
So,
You gotta love it.
so like you have a very stark contrast of like what clearly looks like a bunch of not very serious hobbyists in the U.S. versus like by the mid 80s, you had already produced people like Emin Bostepe who would go on to fight William Cheung and Thomas Rogenkamp and Thomas Mannes and Frank Ringeisen and all these guys who were like serious Wing Chun dudes, right? And in the
Now,
States, you had the
before
property
you-
of the Nut Factory.
Before you went to the castle to train, you were at one of Sifu Imin's seminars.
I had gone.
that right?
I had gone to about 3 of his seminars in
okay.
the U.S. before I went
And
and
these
trained.
were where?
Seattle, Everett, Washington, and New York City.
Nice.
Yeah, so three different locations. I'd seen him. There was some WT in the States. Those guys were all under Emin at that time in the late 90s. I trained with some of those guys, but I could tell the quality wasn't quite the same. That's why I shipped myself off to Germany.
Shipped them.
And then it just happened that while I was in Germany learning the European system,
Right.
at the tail end of my the almost end of that my time in Europe, that's when Emin quit. Because when I went to Europe,
Gotcha.
I wanted to become a Wing Chun instructor. That's why I went to the castle to train full time to become
Okay.
an instructor. And I wanted to come back to the States to open a school. And I was fully assuming that I would be opening a school under Emin's
Emin.
association
Yeah.
because he was the chief instructor.
Right.
It just so happened that while I was there, Emin quit and then started his own association. And then a bunch of those guys stayed with him. But then that old guard from the hobbyist time period,
Yeah.
they of
Took
course
over.
stayed with Leung Ting. And those
Yeah.
were the guys who kind of became the new generation. Now there were some exceptions from like Jeff Webb was kind of from the old guard, but he had also trained in Europe. So he had gotten some European training because he was in the Air Force and had learned some of the European methods. So he was definitely a lot more serious
Okay.
and a lot more skillful than the other guys who learned in the US who were mostly seminar trained. But because they happened to be direct students of Sifu Leung Ting
Okay.
via seminars in the early 80s, that's the first thing they always tell you. I've been doing Wing Chun since 1980. You know, they tell you like how long they've been doing Wing Chun because they want you to know how senior they are. But they do it so unironically in terms of like how god awful they are at Wing Chun. It's like your flex is how long you've been doing it, and you are this level of skill with this few. Like it's not the flex you think it is, right? Because in America, the loyalty was how long you've been around. It wasn't what did you actually do in that time. Sifu Leung Ting's American students think loyalty is collecting dust on a shelf. But they're still there. As opposed to like, yeah, but how much have you actually done in that time period in terms of promoting and building, right? So anyway, when I came to the States, I was excited because now I was going to have a chance to learn directly from Sifu Leung Ting because he took the association back over directly and he said he would be responsible for training the instructors. So here I had just become an instructor in Europe. Now I'm going to come back to the States and now I'm going to get to learn directly from Sifu Leung Ting.
Okay.
So for me, it was great.
Yeah.
You know, I was super, super excited. But what I didn't realize is a lot of the people who stayed in the Leung Ting side
Okay.
were from that old guard, from that hobbyist guard. So these now were like the second generation. These were the people who learned from those guys who got their ranks in a seminar in the 80s.
Okay.
Just by showing up to enough seminars, they got their ranks, as opposed to like the guys in Europe and the guys in Hong Kong who actually got tested and had to fight and really know the program. Right. The American guys got in a very, certificate of participation trophy kind of way, right?
Yes.
But they had such an entitlement about being direct students of Sifu Leung Ting. And it was so jarring for me because in Europe, of course, we use all the polite terms in Chinese Kung Fu etiquette. You call your, people who came before you under the same Sifu, Si Heng and Si Zog and Si Bak. And as a kind of a Kung Fu nerd, I'm into that, right? I'm all for like calling my Siheng Siheng. Like I like that. I like that Kung Fu family aspect, not because of it's like a forced kind of authoritarianism. Call me Sifu, call me, but in the
It's the
positive
culture.
family culture way, not in the I'm being demanded to do this way, but in a I respect you and I'm showing respect kind of way, right? And I'll never forget my first seminar here in the States. I go to Boston.
Yeah.
Sorry, actually, this was my second seminar because I had gone to see Sifu Learning in already. Wait, what's this? No, this was the first seminar. The Boston one was the first seminar.
Okay.
So I go to Boston and then I go in there and there's less than 10 people. And of course, I can imagine Sifu Learning's not happy about that because of the costs.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm going like, dude, I get to be in like a small group seminar with Sifu Learning. So for me, I was like super excited, but I could tell, but I was like, but I also felt kind of bad because I had seen Sifu Learning in Europe where it's just like a packed house.
Yeah.
And then here he was teaching for like a couple of people. And I could kind of feel like, I'm sure he's not that happy, but it was cool for me to have him in that kind of like, because you never would have that kind of access to him in Europe. You used to have to stand on tables just to do the Sunumtao for him so you could see him.
Okay.
Because there's so many people there, right? So
Cow.
I trained with this guy. He's an ABC, American-born Chinese, but he is a student.
ABC.
He's a student of one of, I like how he gets, that's the most common thing. ABK, American-born Korean.
Yeah.
All right. That's a normal thing, Dre.
Easy as
not-
1, 2, 3, Dre.
Yes. All right. I like how he's like getting so excited about the most normal shit.
I'm not.
All right. Okay. MLB, Major League Baseball. Yeah. Okay. I mean, like, oh my God, is that what the NBA, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Nana's Basketball Association, right?
Bananas.
Nana's, right?
COD, cash on delivery.
That's right. So, yeah.
I thought it was Call of Duty, man.
BAMF. Broadcast motherfucker. All right. Okay. Like we could do the acronym thing all the time, right?
ATN.
WT, Wing Chun. All right. Okay. So moving along.
Okay.
So I go to the seminar. I'm super excited. And then this American-born Chinese guy who's a student of one of the seminar seniors, we'll just call them that, the seminar seniors from the 80s. He goes, he extends his hand to me and says, oh, are you Alex Richter from Germany? And I'm like, oh, well, yeah. I'm actually from America, but I trained in Germany. He's like, oh, I've heard a lot about you. When did you start Wing Chun? And I was like, I guess 98 or something like that. Oh, I started in 97, so I guess I'm your Siheng. Okay. But it was just weird because
Ooh.
in Hong Kong, where they are Chinese and they speak the language, that would be considered super awkward.
Yeah.
To be like, because I would just reflexively call someone who I wasn't sure Siheng. Until I found out, oh, you're actually my Sizo. Oh, so sorry, Sizo. But usually within your own Kung Fu family, you would know who someone is, right? And this guy would just basically call Siheng. And I didn't say anything to him yet.
He just came out. Hey,
Right.
When did you start?
Yeah, but
I'm
it was
your
like,
Siheng.
but it was so weird because it was like, before we can even touch hands, we need to establish this.
You know what's odd? He probably went to everyone and did that.
No.
Not just you.
No. Yeah, for sure. No, I'm not saying it just went to me. I just said that was the attitude in the U.S. In Europe, we would go like this and, like hug it out. Like, okay, now we're going to train.
Yeah.
Like, oh, by the way, this is my Siheng or this is my teacher or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Right. But here it was like, oh, no, we need to establish this extremely important thing first and foremost. And it's weird because I felt that I'm someone who loves Chinese culture and the respect. And I would have afforded him that anyway. But the fact that he had to say before anything else, before I could even call him Siheng, he had to establish it. It's kind of like when someone says wish me a happy birthday.
Ooh.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you're like, huh? Tell me you love me.
Oh, no.
Well, am I just
I was
telling
gonna
you?
say, that's not weird. I say that to people all the time.
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
Tell me you love
isn't that
me.
weird when you kind of request it from someone
Yeah.
and then they say it, right? So I just found it as a little bit odd, but
I love meeting my Sihengs and CJs.
but that kind of attitude was very pervasive among the students of the seminar Sifus. the 1980s seminar receivers, right?
Strange.
Like it was very Cartman. You got to respect my authority because I joined a Wing Chun school before you did.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's the only thing that you got if you're
Yes.
like learning.
What was also funny, I think I told this story in like season 1. Then not a few minutes later, we did Chi Sao with Sifu Leung Ting, and like the guy who introduced himself as my Si Hing could not do Chi Sao program 1. And then no, that's the Sifu Lao story. You can
Okay.
it's always my story salad in his brain.
Yeah, I knew, and the thing is, I knew you were gonna like reference that, and I was like, he's gonna reference that story. And
Yeah.
get these mixed up.
No, that was Sifu Lao going to some good old boy, I think from Tennessee.
Yeah,
And he said, "Oh, your cheese so very bad." He was so disgusted. It was so great. But it was true. But anyway, it was weird because then I was able to do the first cheese out section. Sifu Leung Ting said, "Hey, you should train with Alex because he has the reflex action." And then I had to go and actually show him how to do cheese out. And we're the same level, both primary technicians.
He's your CA.
But he's my Seeing. Well, then I just kept calling him Seeing the whole time. All right. Does that make sense, Seeing? Does that make sense, Seeing? And he was always very respectful to me after that. But I always just thought that was kind of weird because I've been in the room with tons of Wing Chun people to which I am their senior. And I would just feel like such a jackhole to go, when did you start? Okay. You need to call me Siba. Okay? Like, calm down, buddy.
It's not that serious.
Calm down. So anyway, the question was, what is the hardest thing about learning Hong Kong Wing Chun? So anyway, that was like a little bit of my introduction. But then when I started taking private lessons from Sifu Lao, and he started to show me he goes, okay, now we'll do the Chi Sao sparring, which I always just understood as free Chi Sao, highest Chi Sao, right?
Okay.
And then and he just starts lighting me up with a quick brrrr, and not in like the way that I would get lit up by my European instructors. This was like way more organic and fast and visceral. And I was like, oh, and then he looked at me. He's like, oh, have you not learned Chi Sao sparring? And I'm like, oh.
No.
It's that kind of like admitting you don't know something.
There's Chi
but
Sao
you kind
sparring?
of well, no, but the things we did, like we did free Chi Sao.
Okay.
So I'm like, yes, but I didn't realize like, oh no, this is like a methodology, and this is like there's a way that it's built out of Chi Sao Program 1, because there's so much section focus in WT that, and they think like the Hong Kong guys are only teaching sections, but that's really not what they're doing. And then so it was a huge adjustment, and I really had to kind of eat crow on like, oh, I'm a first level technician and I don't know this thing that is for like a mid-level student. And then so that was a little challenging, but I wouldn't say it was difficult because I wanted to learn it, because it's like, what is this sorcery and can you teach me? All right. So I think deciding whether something is difficult or easy it's a matter of framing. I mean, because you can look at the things that challenge you in life and go like, oh God, this is difficult, or these are trials and tribulations. Or you can just imagine that your life is one long science experiment in which you are trying to figure out what is the best way to handle all of these things. And then you get information. How do I handle this challenge? And that information you get from the experience of handling a challenge, you now apply next time that thing comes up in your life. So if you can reframe those things, and it's maybe harder to do with legit challenges, like, things that might happen in your personal life.
Right.
But with something like martial arts, which people sometimes I think need to remind themselves, you're doing this because it's fun. As much as I do because of self-defense, I'm doing it because you're doing it because you enjoy it.
I'm doing it just in case I get in a fight.
Yeah. You're doing it because something about it you enjoy. So when there's something challenging or difficult that you are encountering within your style, reframe it as a challenge to get over. Find different ways to attack it. Look at it as a way to expand what you know and what you can do. And don't look at it as a roadblock, because a life without roadblocks, a life without hurdles is an unexamined life that is untested and not able to handle the stormy winds when they come.
Right.
So, yeah.
You made me think how when I started, it was a challenge for me to just find time to train.
Yes.
Because I was training it. I was like, oh, I love this. But then I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And I didn't have time. So I needed to
It's like-
make time.
it's like
So that
when
was
a-
the hardest part for
It's
me.
like when a girl asks, "Do you love me?" or "Are you in love with
yeah,
me?"
yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah, it's a classic.
it became like a challenge for me to train. So it just became me training all the time,
Yeah.
even at work,
Right.
all the time. Then I figured out how to get out of work and get laid off where I can train full time.
Yeah.
And things were perfect
Right.
at that time, you know?
Right,
So
right.
I think that was the hardest part, was me trying to figure out when to train or when can I train.
But those are good problems.
yeah, but
Those are not like challenges like that.
but when I think about it, that was a big challenge.
Yeah.
Now, see, the hardest part for me was actually like understanding what I was being taught intellectually and trying to make my body actually do it.
Right.
Because, you know, I just come from 3 years of pretty hardcore Muay Thai training. Like I was like going class
wow.
like 4 nights a week, 3 hours a night kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right? And then suddenly like, no, you now have to have your fists up kind of vertical and
Right.
you have to have all your weight on the back foot.
Right.
And knowing and being taught it by whoever it was. I mean, my first lesson was actually with Seabuck Nicole, and
Awesome.
then Arnell was like Arnell and Jam were my foundations class, like tutors and stuff. But then just being like going like, you're telling me this, and I'm watching you do it, but my body is refusing to do this thing that I keep telling it to do. Because
Isn't that the title of an R. Kelly song? My body's refusing to do this thing that I'm telling it to do. Is it? Like, doesn't he have a song with a title like
I
that?
think of it like that's the diss
My
track to
body's
R.
telling
Kelly.
me no,
But
my body,
Yes.
my body's telling me yes.
It's what's it? Bump and grind.
I don't see nothing wrong. Yep.
Yeah. Fantastic. See, back to R. Kelly again.
Looks like I'm drinking bourbon.
Yeah, but you know what's funny? I recently came across a video of me training with one of
R.
my
Kelly?
one of my old training partners, Hal, from the West Coast.
would love to see that.
And it was when we both started learning the long pole from Sifu Larry. So it's back in the 2000s, and we had, I think, just taken our first bunch of lessons, and so we wanted to practice some of the the applications and stuff with the pole. And learning the long pole, as you know, is like quite challenging because you've been doing Wing Chun for a number of years. Now you have all this like strength training. You have all this like specific like how do you hold the poles? The front hand this went here, and holding like everything
Those
in the correct
adjustments
grip.
are
And,
wild,
and it's all these like it's holding it with the bent wrist or
Right.
how you hold it and the stab. There's so many details, right? And then you feel like a complete and utter noob because it's like
Super noob.
well, it's like learning a new martial art because the stance you're using a horse stance, side on position. It's like everything that is the opposite of Wing Chun, right? So you feel like you're learning a new martial art, and it's kind of challenging because no matter how good you were in the fist fighting stuff, the moment you start learning long pole, it's like, well, I might be a black belt in the fist fighting, but I'm a white belt with this 9-foot long pole in my hand, right? And we filmed it, and I was watching it.
Oh yeah, and you're like,
And of course, now I'm looking at it like I like it's of course cringy to always look at like, and because this video is now set like 17 years ago or something like that, right? And I'm looking at it, I'm going like, oh, but it's not that bad. I'm going like, oh God, like, I can see where obviously I've improved and I don't do things quite that way, but I can still see that, yeah, I just learned it. So I'm very green with it, right? And we're both very green. But the funny thing is I'm watching the video and we're both laughing. We're going like, oh man, this is so much fun, but man, we really suck at this. And I just, and it was interesting to see my attitude then. Yeah. Which is actually the same attitude that I have now. Like I knew that I wasn't good at it yet. And I knew that it was really challenging, but we were having fun because dude, we're fighting with Kung Fu long poles. Like here we are back and forth trying to hit each other. And like, so for me, I go, but that's kind of how I framed anything that was kind of difficult. When you learn the knives in Wing Chun, you have so many details about how you hold it, how you chop, how you transfer the power. The angle is the wrist can't be this way. It's got to be this way. Shoulders got to be in a certain position. You can't turn your body to like, there's a lot of details, right? But you look at that and you go, cool. These are details I want to get into because I want to be good at this. It's not like, oh my God, there's so much stuff. Would you rather there's not that much stuff and then anyone could just do it?
No.
But surely the question is, what would you consider most difficult? So the fact that you found it fun is kind of immaterial, because the thing about it is that if you look at it objectively, yeah, I'm having a great time doing it. But just take out that. It's like, what was the thing where you were just like, man, let's say argument, okay, the more fun you have, the more difficult it is. So what was the most fun thing that you did?
If my gut reaction, and it sounds weird, the hardest thing about that time was dealing with the association politics. No, I mean, as far as even dealing, I talked about it like on a previous episode about Sipu Leung being so harsh. You know, where he's like at my school criticizing everything I have on the wall. Why do you have this? And oh, this is stupid. And oh, look at this student here is not doing this right. Blah 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 blah. Like all of that, I just took that in stride. Like those are your lumps learning from a traditional Chinese instructor who's just going to tell you at every turn,
gotta take your lumps.
You're a piece of shit, right? Okay, because remember in the Chinese language, you know, when you're learning martial arts in Hong Kong, you have tak is okay, and you have tak, which is not okay. But
wow.
You have to imagine it's like okay is like passable, and then is like not passable, not okay. But the spectrum for is like you are an absolute idiot that can't do it, all the way to you can almost do it. And all of that would be, it's almost like not yet. So it's like you get no feedback. It's like a carbon fiber bike frame, right? It's all super light. You don't see any wear and tear, and then one day it just breaks. Okay. Well, that is the moment where you get your finally your duck. All right. So there's no spectrum of like, oh God, that's awful. Okay, you can do the basic movements, but it's not executed very well. All right, you can do the movements, but it's lacking power. All right, okay, you can do the movements with power, but you can't apply it yet. Okay, and now you got it. It's like, no, you got it. Okay, like I could deal with that because that's a cultural thing. That's a Asian pedagogy thing. That's just like, okay, I can deal with that. I also don't need to be told by my instructor that I'm always doing it well. I'm even when I train with Magno, and Magno's like, hey, you got to get your arm in there. But I'm never like, but tell me the things I'm doing right. Oh, like, man. That's just not like, I'm for me personally, when people teach me, I'm a firm, it's not how I teach, but when I learn, it's like, he who praises me is my teacher. He who praises me is my thief. He who criticizes me is my teacher. So I'm like, no, just literally tell me everything I'm doing wrong so I can fix it.
Okay.
All right. I don't need to be handheld or anything like that. Right. So that part was fine. But the difficulty was dealing with all the politics, was dealing with all the bullshit, like, oh, you like if this other student who's part of the association comes to your school, but you're not his Sifu, you can't teach him X, Y, Z. Okay, fine. And then like, your EWTO is still part of our association, right? Because it's all Leung Wing Chun. But if they want to come to Leung seminars in the U.S., they need to get special permission, and they need to go and talk to, like, it was all that stuff. That was the challenging bit. The Kung Fu part, that's the part that I love. All right. That is why I'm the Kung Fu genius. That's the part that I love. All right. I can do this shit all day, like Captain America said. All right. But no, it's just the grinding politics. Jesus Christ. That was just fucking awful. Wow. So anyway, before we go on to the next question, and this is only relevant for people who are watching us. Maybe you notice I'm wearing this you notice this slick hoodie that I'm wearing? Look at this here, the Chinese on the side. All right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So this is actually from one of our, I suppose you could say, longtime listeners. He's an Instagram follower of mine. He's created his own, I don't want to give away his name because it's his company now. Maybe he wants to stay anonymous.
Okay.
But he's got a brand. He's got a brand, and it's all like Asian themed, like clothing and like, hoodies and things like this, like really slick stuff. I wore this at the gym yesterday. Yeah. And somebody was like following me around, kept giving me like the weird looks. And then I'm like, maybe the guy recognized me from the podcast. No. He came in. He's like, yo, is that, he asked me if this had something to do with Dragon Ball Z. And I was like, no. And he's like, Goku. Like he was saying all this stuff. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know Dragon Ball Z.
Goju,
But yeah, but he was like, oh man, that's totally slick. So I was getting comment. You know, of course, you know, me, I'm going like, oh, maybe he's a podcast fan. It's like, no, he's just looking at the hoodie that I'm wearing, right? So anyway, right now, so he sent me this here as a sample. This is totally slick. Yeah, check that out. It's totally dope, right? Nice. And then so you know, just as a favor to him, we're not getting any sponsorship money or anything like that. But if you guys would give him a follow on Instagram, it's at east.asianconnection. So Asian Connection is all one. That's him on IG, east.asianconnection. Go ahead and give him a follow on Instagram. And if you see his stuff, it's totally dope. Right now, for a limited time, 15% off on offers, but you got to use the code EAC2024. EAC2024.
Nice.
All right, you get 15% off your first order. It's pretty dope stuff. So check it out. I'll put a link for it below in the description. But yeah, support our fans who do cool stuff.
Word.
All right, Dre, what else you got for me, man?
So many people are confused about basics in Wing Chun Chi-Sao. Some view it as a collection of moves, and masters confuse their own students by talking of principles and concepts without telling them what's what. The 15 Chi-Sao Fundamentals is my attempt at explaining Wing Chun Chi-Sao from a perspective of principles, but also with the basic techniques required to express those principles. It shows the framework for Hong Kong Wing Chun Chi-Sao, in particular, the training of Pun Sao and Lap Da. This is necessary training before going on to the higher and more spontaneous expressions of Chi-Sao. Right now, if you use the code KFG Chi-Sao, you can get a signed copy of my book for the price of the unsigned one. Click on the link in the description below and use the code KFG Chi-Sao at checkout to get a signed copy of this full-color, over 230-page manual on the vital foundational training exercise of Wing Chun. This offer is good while supplies last, so get yours today.
Okay, so next up we got Mr. Osirik or Osirik.
Okay.
Okay. I apologize if I botched that.
Yeah, people are used to it.
Yeah, so it's okay. Sir, where did the Loi Lao Hui Sung Lat Sao Jik Chung Da Sao Jik Siu Sao Lin Siu Dai Da, etc. come from? I've heard of the term Chun, I don't know how that's Kuit, right?
Yes.
But
Heir to the
are these
empire.
it? Huh? Sorry?
Heir to the empire.
This guy. You're the heir. What are you talking about? Right? But are these it? Did Yip Man suddenly belt out this sayings? Is it from Wing Chun only, or Hung Kyun, or the greater Kung Fu sayings, or even from Hung Moon or Mun? Is there a list somewhere to collect them all?
All right, that's a great question. So what the question is basically about all the various sayings we have in Wing Chun. All right. So this is actually a really good topic. When it comes to the sayings, sometimes they're called maxims, or sometimes they're called, Sifu Learning Ting likes to use the word mottos.
Yeah.
Although mottos is normally something like, you know, our company motto is, you know, every customer gets, you know, double service or whatever. Like motto for me is normally some kind of like thing like this. I think maxim is better.
Okay.
In Chinese, has a couple different names. The kun kut. That basically means fist sayings or fist secrets. And usually the term kun kut refers to the specific chops made by the late Sifu Moyat. So the Sifu Moyat, who was a close student of Grandmaster Yip Man in the middle period, he was also a bit of an artist. And what he did was he took many of these sayings, not all of them, but I would say a large percentage of the high percentage ones he took, and he put them on these kind of stone chops, like almost like a stamp.
Cool.
And then so did them in like cool different styles. And there are lots of different sayings that we have in Wing Chun. Many of the ones that, you know, we would also teach in our school as well. And those are called the kun kut. They're like these stone chops, these like stone engravings with those words on it. Now, supposedly he made those for Grandmaster Yip Man, but somehow they ended up in the States, and then eventually they ended up, I think, at the Wing Chun Museum in Ohio or something like that. But there's some controversy about the whether they should be there. They should still be in the possession of Moyet's family or whatever. But those are not my politics.
All right.
But those are so usually when we say kun, we are specifically referring to those stone chops that Moyet made. Because the sayings themselves, we don't really call those kun. Usually call them like some fat. Some means heart, and fat is like method, which in that heart meaning like it means like the core methods, the core ideas, okay, of the style. Or sometimes in a more general term in Chinese, although these are normally not specific to martial arts, you might say xingyu, which are like sayings or something like that, right? But usually the term xingyu means like, they're more general and they're not necessarily martial arts related. Like an apple a day keeps the doctor away. That type of thing is like a xingyu, right?
Okay.
But usually the ones specifically pertaining to like martial arts, you might say samfa, right? Or, specifically kunkut. But kunkut, it's a little more specific. Samfa is a little more general.
All right.
So there's a lot of these. Now, a couple things that, because these are a big deal for Westerners. I remember when Sifu Leung started teaching instructor tutorials in the early 2000s, and he started writing all of these mottos. And it was largely a reaction to because Sergio had come out on the scene as having secretly learned privately from Sifu Leung for many years. And then he was talking about all these mottos and, because Sergio basically kind of came back to Europe and started his own association and broke away from Leung and all these guys. Was talking about, he learned the real Hong Kong style. Look at all these mottos and blah, 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 blah. So suddenly a lot of the European instructors were like, mottos? What are you talking about? And then so when Sifu Leung came and taught officially for the EWTO, he got them to write, they got him to write a lot of the mottos. And then there was a big thing of like, do you know all the mottos or whatever, right? And so a couple things I would say about that. As someone who's kind of nerds out about Chinese and Chinese culture and Chinese sayings and mottos, like this is right up my alley. You could have a list of all of them, okay? And unless you really understand what they mean, all right, so that would be the first layer, is understand what they mean.
Okay.
But then ultimately,
character-wise.
Yeah, but also like what is the context? Because it's not always clear.
Character, like based on where the character is and
based on the total meaning of what the thing's supposed to mean.
Okay.
Like, do you know what that means, or how that can be interpreted different ways, right?
Okay.
And then second is, can you actually apply that? Is it something that you use to improve how you do martial arts, or is it just something like you go, I have a list of all the mottos, ergo I know them. Then you don't know them unless you can do it, right? I mean, if you can apply it, then then you can say you know it, right? If you just sing a bunch of nice sounding platitudes
comes from the heart
while someone
coming out the heart.
Yeah, well, I mean, but like just sing a bunch of platitudes while someone's elbowing you in the face is not the point, right? So even if it would be possible or conceivable to have a list of all of these, which I don't believe is possible, that still doesn't solve your problem.
You did a great job in your book.
Well, I put the pertinent ones. Well, I put them in the Chunky book too, and in the Wooden Dummy. I put all the pertinent ones for that topic that I know. Now, the thing with the sayings that I think a lot of Westerners have a hard time understanding is some of them are formal. They're formal in structure, like formal Chinese. They have a form, they have a structure. And some of them are just like off the cuff things that a Sifu might say in Chinese. And some of them are literal instructions. It's just in Chinese. Because as a Westerner, you don't know Chinese. You're learning a Chinese martial art. So anytime you hear Chinese being prattled off in regards to your martial art, it sounds secret and mystical. Even though if you could put the Google thing in your ear and have an instant translation, and you would listen to the Chinese Sifu explain something in Chinese, it would sound, if you could have it translated directly into English, it would translate like, when you use the slapping hand, be careful when you go on the inner gate. Okay.
It.
And that would be the direct thing. But you would hear in Chinese, Pak Sao Gei Loi Mun.
Caleb.
And then you're
Okay.
like, oh, what does that mean? And how does it, and it's literally just some shit said like what a coach would say to his student.
Yeah.
But now you carve that out as a sentence. It's in Chinese, and now it's a motto, it's a saying, and then it has this prestige when if we flipped it around, all right? And we took Mickey from Rocky, all right, as and you imagine that
He's a bum.
yeah, and you imagine boxing is a martial art taught in English. And then just flip everything culturally a little bit. And let's say in 1970s Hong Kong, suddenly boxing became like the cool, like Western boxing became the coolest thing, the way Kung Fu did, right? And then you had this American guy who was like awesome at boxing. And now suddenly everyone wants to learn Western boxing in Hong Kong. And they're speaking Cantonese and they're getting these sayings from Mickey. I want you to eat thunder and crap lightning. But you know what I mean? But now they're speaking Chinese. Okay. And in the middle of a Chinese sentence is, you know, a Chinese person trying to pronounce in English, I want you to eat thunder and crap lightning. You know what I mean? Yeah. Wow, what does that mean, Sibu, right? And then the Sibu has to give some interpretation of what it means to eat thunder and crap lightning, right? But in the original source material, it's just something the Sibu said to the student. Like, you know, 沉爭落膊. What sounds like so, like, you know, sinking elbow. Drop your shoulder, right? It sounds like when you write it and you formalize it, it sounds like, but it's literally like, bro, keep your shoulders down and keep your elbows low.
Right.
All right. Like that's what it means. All right. But it's written in a somewhat poetic way in Chinese. And suddenly it has this extra meaning because of the poetry behind it. All right. Now, when it comes to the sayings, it's a mixed bag. Some of them are actually shared by other martial arts. So in other words, some of them are not exclusive to Wing Chun.
Okay.
Some of them are certainly exclusive to Wing Chun. And some of them are in other styles, but modified. So for example, the one that I just said, 沉爭落膊, all right, which is 沉 is to sing. That's, by the way, why a lot of people argue whether 沉 Q, the second form, means search for the bridge or sinking bridge, because the character is, there's two different characters, one that means search, one that means sink, and they're identically pronounced, 沉. But in this case, this 沉 means to sink. 沉爭, sink the elbow, 落 literally means to fall. Bok is the shoulder. So sinking elbow, dropping shoulder. We're not the only ones that have that. In fact, Hong Kong also has it, but with a slight modification. In Hong Kong, they don't say 沉爭落膊. They say 沉爭, sink the elbow, 對膊. 對 means across from, in this case. Because you know when they hold their jisao, this position here, the elbow is low and the hand is across from the shoulder. So in Hong Kong, they say 沉爭對膊. 對膊, 對 means across from the shoulder, in front of the shoulder. And then we say 落膊, drop the shoulder. So you can see where some similar styles that were around the same region have some overlap in their sayings. But because Hong Kong has the hand in front of the shoulder, we have the hand in the middle. We emphasize the lowering of the shoulder. They're emphasizing the hand in front of the shoulder. But it is copy my homework and change it a little bit. Okay. So you have some that are kind of like that they overlap, some that are the same, and some that are exclusive. And so some of them are older. You can tell by the poetry of the language, like 战动马不动, which is more formal Chinese, because in Cantonese you don't say but to mean no, you say So anytime you see but, it's like more formal Chinese. It's like if the elbow moves, the stance doesn't move. And then the inverse, 马动张不动, right? If the stance moves, the elbow doesn't move, which is this immovable elbow idea that Bruce Lee got a little twisted, right? Because he got half of it, right? That has a very formal feeling to it. But ultimately, it's saying, you know, when turning defensively, you know, move your elbows first, then turn your body. Don't do it at the same time or you'll get whacked. That's like all it means. But it's written in like 2 stanzas of 5 characters. So it's got the poetry behind it and everything. And then it's got this feel. And ultimately, It's like when you're turning using defensive movements like bong and quan, form the position first and then use your opponent's force to turn. Because if you do it at the same time, you're doing it actively and you could get hit, right? And that's literally all. It doesn't apply to anything else in Wing Chun. So you have these more formal, traditional sounding ones. And then you have some that are like, you can tell they're from the 50s and 60s because they're much more modern and they're much more slangy canto. They're not like the old poetry. So the mottos are not all from one source and they got passed down. Every generation, because it's a fighting art, it's a living. So every generation, they have to improve it a little bit. So maybe they come up with new sayings to get these ideas across. For example, thatotherwingchunguy, hit the head, no kick. That's very modern Hong Kong slang. That does not sound like it's like Qing Dynasty wisdom.
Okay.
That sounds like, and it also just sounds like some of your coach was like, Sibu, every time I fight this guy, he's always kicking me because you got to close the gap. Oh yeah, how do I close the gap? Hit his head to stop his kicks. All right. And of course, even that, as simple as it is, has a surface meaning and a deeper meaning. All right. In Wing Chun, where you have a squared up position, you have to fight very close. So when someone tries to kick you, if you close the gap and you can punch someone in the head while they're kicking, they're standing on one leg, you're standing on two, and you punch them right in the face the moment they lift their leg. That's an effective kick defense.
Right.
But the deeper meaning is because of Wing Chun's squared up position, if you can punch someone in the face when they're lifting their leg, you're too close to them to kick anyway.
Right.
So the wisdom is not like stand out here at distance and every time the guy tries to kick you, try to hit him in the head first. Right? Because then you have a range problem.
Yeah.
The point is hit him in the head so that he cannot kick you. So it's like it can be appreciated on one level, kind of in a surface way, but has a slightly more, it has a deeper meaning, right?
Gap.
And so that's why the mottos and the sayings or whatever you want to, it's a mixed bag of formal stuff. Ting you, so like the whole like straighten the waist and suck in the stomach. Like all of those kind of traditional sayings, like with the head up with horizontal vision. There's some like yu ma hap yat, which is like the stance and the waist have to be unified. That's not only in Wing Chun. You have that in like all Southern martial arts, right? Okay. So we have, and then we have some like, and then the mottos are not just a mixed bag of like traditional and formal and modern and slangy, and also just shit your Chinese instructor will say to you, but it's now put into a sentence so it sounds like something wise. It's just like a section of Cantonese. You have those, but then you also have like, you have some that are for the forms, you have some that are for the chi sao, you have some that are for the fighting mindset, you have some that are for technical execution.
Okay.
And fighting mindsets one are like, lao qing, but cho sao. But lao cheng, right? Fight with no mercy. With mercy, don't fight. That's very kind of formal, right? Dao some fighting heart, all these kind of things. So the mottos kind of run the gamut in terms of like some are the theory, some are technical execution, some are mental state, some are training. You know what I mean? And it's very clear these weren't all developed at once by some former generation and then passed down. Every generation adds, deletes to this list.
Now, in Germany, were they about those maxims a lot, or
no, not at all.
Like,
no, that wasn't really until Sergio came on the scene, which was towards the end of my time in Germany.
Okay,
where it was like, oh, there's all these mottos and sayings. You don't really know Hong Kong Wing Chun unless you know all these mottos. And I'm like, okay. I need to learn. But for me, I didn't worry because I was going to go to the States and learn from him. So I could just ask Siva Learning, hey, what are the mottos for this? What are the mottos for that?
That's when you started learning those.
Yeah, that's when I started learning. But everyone in Europe was trying to catch up. And it was funny because then that got me more into studying Cantonese. Yeah. And the more I would study and find out the meanings of the words, I'm like, oh, this is just normal stuff. Okay. It's a ridiculous example, but it's like, imagine you're a Chinese speaker and you speak no English. Okay. And you want to learn boxing. And you hear me coaching someone and I tell him or her, you got to continually dig to the body to get to the head. All right. Now that was a specific correction I gave. So, you're always going for the head. The guy's covering up. You can't go for that. So you start ripping to the body, lowering the arms, and then the head opens, right? Very standard boxing advice. But now you as a non-English speaker fixate on you got to work the body to get to the head. And you heard me say that a few times. And now you write that in English. You have to work the body to get to the head. And you write it on the wall as like this wisdom. And then someone who speaks English comes in and looks at it. It's like, you got to work the body to get to the head. Yeah. If that's your problem, if that's what you're talking about. But the other boxer rips to the body anyway, doesn't have that problem. The other guy can make head hunting work. The other guy. So it's like, this is not advice for everyone. This is advice for that one situation, right? Okay. But because it's in another language, and in our case, it's Chinese, so there's something esoteric and mystical about it. Things that are like normal ass things an instructor would say to you, it just happens they're saying it to you in Chinese. Okay. Get written in Chinese, and then it goes on the wall. And mind you, some of the stuff is poetic. Right. Some of the stuff is deeper wisdom. But some of the stuff, you know, 幫手不停留, right? The 幫手 doesn't stop, right? Okay. 幫手飛手, 幫手 is not a hand technique, right? That sounds a lot just like the shit someone would say to you in Chinese who's happened to teach you in Chinese, right? Yeah. Whereas some of the other ones, you know, Wing Chun, Chun Jing Tong, like, you know, we teach the orthodox Wing Chun. They say, like, that's more formal and poetic, but they're not all that way. It's not an even distribution of poetic Chinese that your instructor is imparting to you,
it's just
right?
someone making a bunch of mistakes.
It's a mixed, it's a mixed bag of.
Stop throwing a bongsa out there.
Exactly. Right. Yeah,
Jesus.
You know, 最型不追手, right?
Jesus, Dre.
Go to the body, don't go to the hand. You know, chase the body, don't chase the hands. There's a little bit of a poetry to it, but it's also just like, you know, hey, stop chasing your opponent's hands. You're going to get knocked out. All right. Which is why it's always so funny when I saw some JKD video the other day going like, you know, he's there and he has a student start wailing on him and he's trying to catch it. And he's like, see, you can't catch punches in the air, so stop trying to trap and do Wing Chun. And every time I see like a JKD guy misrepresent Wing Chun, it's like, bro, oh no. We literally have a saying that says, go to the body, which doesn't mean like just the torso. It means your opponent. Yeah. Don't chase the hands. Right. Okay. Yao so, chi so, if their hands stick to hands. Mo so, man lo, no hands, go forward. Like literally our sayings are hit the body, don't hit the hands, or chase the body, don't chase the hands, right? If their hands, stick to them. If there are no hands, go forward, right? But everyone wants to interpret Wing Chun as a style where we're trying to play grab ass with someone's hands, right? And it's like, and then they're going, see, it doesn't work. And we know this because we're advanced JKD people. Bro, it's in the tenets of Wing Chun. Damn it. All right? Now, before we get out of here, I think we have a special treat for our audience.
Do we?
Yes. And I think for this treat, I think you're going to have to swap places with the British one. All right? Okay. So we had threatened on previous episodes that we were going to do readings of the venerable and honorable and experienced
and people wanted that
master of the ancient art of Japanese ninjutsu, Ashita Kim.
Yes.
Who also is a master of the amorous arts, the bed arts.
The bed arts.
And he decided to put these things into a book. Okay. And I think maybe for the next few episodes, we should have some select readings from the amorous adventures of Ashita Kim. What do you think?
I love it.
So why don't you go ahead and trade with our boy who has proper pronunciation and diction?
Did you say Dixon?
Yes. And apologize for those of you who are listening to us, but he's definitely going to read it. But could you please show the cover and just show the general quality of the book to the audience? So I ordered this directly from Ashita Kim many, many years ago, but coming close on 20 years as a joke, because Ashita Kim's always been kind of funny. But look at this. He like printed it on his own computer at home and then just stapled it.
How did you find out about Ashita?
Well, there's an amazing thing called Google. No. I knew about Ashita Kim since I was a child, because I was into ninjas. And when you went to the bookstores, which was like, you know, Walden Books or B. Dalton Books in the mall, they would always have like a small martial arts section in the 80s. And ninjutsu was big, and there were only two ninja authors. It was like either Stephen K. Hayes, who's from the Hatsumi line, or it was Ashita Kim. And here's what a nut job I've always been. Because I would read the magazines, Black Belt Magazine, Inside Kung Fu Magazine, all that stuff. So I knew a little bit about ninjas. And I had also seen Shokisugi movies, so I thought I knew more about ninjas than I actually did. And I remember like, oh, what is this book by Ashita Kim? You know, it's like he had all these books, right? And they had all these interesting titles, like Ninja Mind Control and Ninja Invisibility and blah 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 blah. So you know, and I would take Ashita Kim's book off the shelf, and I remember looking at the photos, and as like a 9 or 10-year-old kid going like, I don't think this is real. And you know what made me not feel that this was real?
What was it?
There was something shady looking about him. I'm like, I don't trust that this white guy's a ninja. Mind you, the other ninja author was Stephen K. Hayes, who is as white as they come.
Right.
But I knew that he had a real Japanese teacher. Meanwhile, there's this like Florida man looking, when the joke is he actually is from Florida, Florida man looking redneck. You know what I mean? Like he looks like he drives a small pickup truck, not a big one. And his mask wasn't a ninja mask. Do you know what it was? It was the ski mask with the 3 holes, you know, like the ones you did robberies with in the 80s.
What a balaclava.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that no? I mean, like the one with the hole here and the 2 holes here.
That's
Yeah.
the balaclava.
Oh, I thought that a balaclava was a thing you wrap around.
No. Balaclava is like a whole, like kind of like thing. I mean, sometimes you get like the bigger hole, or maybe it's just like a full
He knows
thing.
all about these masks with holes in it. He also knows about the ones with the zippers in the front.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so anyway, I'm like, why is he wearing like a ninja ski mask? I'm like, this guy's not a real ninja. And that was enough. And I never like looked into his books. Like, I just remember looking at them as a kid and go, something feels fake. And I put them back. And I always thought like in Ashita Kim, sounds kind of Koreanish, but Japanese. Like, even as a kid, I was like, something's not right about this guy, right? Wow. And then so when the internet came out, and then like Google, you have all these people like martial arts boards talking about Ashita Kim and stuff. I was like, I remember that guy. And then I found that he had a website. He got famous or infamous in the 2000s because on his website, you could purchase a black belt in any style you wanted. And he would send you a certificate in that style. And then a bunch of
purchase a black belt.
Yeah, and then just purely for money. And then a bunch of like MMA fans went on his website and purchased a black belt in MMA. All right, which of course there's no such thing as a black belt in MMA. And they paid whatever the fee was, $50-$60 or whatever. And lo and behold, Ashita Kim sends them a certificate from the Black Dragon Society for a black belt in MMA. And so they use it to expose basically what a fraud he was. And then there were a bunch of videos of him that were uploaded from his various instructional videos, like these fake him dodging bullets. It was like not even real. He would add the bullet sounds, and it's just him rolling in a field. It's stupid. So anyway, I went on his website and I saw that he had a bunch of books. But when I saw the amorous adventures of Ashita Kim, you know, the book was like $7 or whatever. I was like, I have to get it.
Yeah.
So now, before we get out of here, a short selection of the amorous adventures of Ashita Kim, allegedly, by Mikey Deane.
Take it
Yeah,
away.
I'd like to say-
Improper RP, please.
Yes, absolutely. I'd like to say Ashita Kim may not be a real ninja, but Dre is definitely a real ninja.
Yeah, that's right. He's my ninja.
Yeah, he's my ninja too.
Yes.
Ninja, please.
All right.
All right. So a little taster for you, everyone, because this is just a taste before we get to the full production version of this, right?
Yes.
So
You in a robe and a corncob pipe and everything, right?
100%. Oh,
We should
I didn't see you here.
we should do that for my IG and stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
And for YouTube Shorts.
Yeah.
100%.
Guys, if you want that, put it in the comments.
No, we're gonna do it anyway,
doing
whether
it
they want it or not. This is not a democracy
Absolutely.
here.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, go ahead.
We are the North Koreas of Ashita Kim.
That's right.
Anyway, so all rights reserved. No part of this copyrighted book may be reproduced or copied in any manner whatsoever,
Or read on a YouTube channel.
including information storage and retrieval systems without express written permission of the author and publisher. None of the names used in this book have been changed to protect the innocent. First, because no one mentioned in this adventure was using their right name at the time, and because no one was innocent.
First of all, can you imagine if that's true?
Imagine.
Yeah, like let's say you're like a former mafia member and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't change the names or anything, so like no one was innocent. So let me just tell you what Bob did.
Prologue. Surely you realize that we cannot agree to your request, said the leader of the robed and hooded figures. You are just coming off a bad relationship and are after revenge. Not at all, I protested. Besides, I don't see what the big deal is. I sanctioned this guy. I should be able to take away his sanction. But you know that membership is for life and has never been rescinded before, he replied. Ah, but this membership is purely functionary, I countered. Part of the sanction, I have to authorize schools and instructors. It's not like he is really a member or has gone anywhere or done anything for the club. When we told you that you could do this because of the interest generated by your books and because of your association with the thuggy, we told you this sort of thing might happen. And I told you that I would take care of it, and this is how I want to do it. The guy is just a bully who grew up to become a wife-beater and child abuser. Now he is running an underage whorehouse and calling it a karate school. His classes are brutal, and he is not serving the function of our order to preserve, practice, and promote the martial arts, which is why you agreed to let me have this program. What you say is true, but first, it is not our policy to interfere in the actions of any of our members, regardless of how they come to us. And second, it is forbidden to use the art and craft for personal gain or revenge. I gain nothing from this action. In fact, I lose a dojo. Nor is it for revenge, because the girl is already lost. It is so that others will not have their lives ruined by this monster, I said.
Is this going anywhere?
This is the prologue. We're headed there. Like I said, this is the tease. Yeah. We're going to get very amorous in the next few episodes. But right now, we're just working this shit out, right?
Are you reading the whole thing?
I'm reading. The prologue is short. It's only 3 pages long.
Okay.
Okay, and we're almost over, so, excuse me, being interrupted. And who are you, young Master Kim, to judge what is a monster? Our order has existed for thousands of years, primarily because we refrain from taking action or trying to direct the lives of others. Did we stop the Japanese from bombing Pearl Harbor? Excuse me. Or Genghis Khan from laying waste to his empire? And what of the thuggies? Certainly most would consider their use of the way to be perverse, although they maintained it was patriotic to rid their land of the British. But we did not intervene, because the course of history is already written. We are merely free to participate in it as we choose. Surely any of those would be greater and more noble motives than simply kicking one member out of our august organization. Your cause is insignificant in comparison. He had spoken quietly and with great dignity. The others assembled and nodded their agreement from time to time. They sat in a circle around a small campfire, the cool evening breeze stirring the flames, lending an eerie effect to the sky, scattering sparks into the star-filled night sky. As for brothels, they have existed since the beginning of time, so that is no reason to waste all this time and effort on a meaningless event that won't even be remembered 100 years from now. Didn't you yourself say that you had worked as a bouncer in a brothel in Birmingham when you left college? Yes, I did. Then obviously you did not learn the lesson that was intended for you at the time. Therefore, we cannot agree to let you banish this member. Then, teacher, I must insist, I said resolutely. And you are willing to engage in a ritual combat for this cause? I am. It is my responsibility. Then we shall send you to a place where you shall have that opportunity. And if you still require that this action be taken upon your return, if you return, it shall be done as you request. But remember, your only true responsibility is to yourself, to be the best person you can be, so that you may set a good example for all. Be guided by this truth. Sometimes the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Sometimes the need of the few outweigh the needs of the many. Between these two are the brothers of the Pole Star School, the keepers of knowledge, all knowledge, any knowledge, because at some point in time, some part of it may provide an application that will benefit the many or the few or all. The meeting was at an end.
Wow. I think we lost everyone who was listening.
Don't worry, it gets amorous.
It gets.
I was waiting to hear something very amorous today.
Okay, would you like a quick paragraph?
Okay, quick paragraph.
Okay.
Amorousness.
I thought you guys were tough. Hell, I could fuck all of you and never even feel it. Show us your tits then, suggested someone, to which she replied defiantly by turning and pulling up her top. Now you're interested.
Stay tuned for the next episode of the Kung Fu Genius podcast. And that's all I got to say about that. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Kung Fu Genius, because I certainly enjoyed that ending. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius. Hit that bell for notifications. Support us on Patreon or right here on YouTube with memberships. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Word is I'm a kung fu genius. Technique speaks for me, not lineage. Forget Jet Li, cause I'm the one. Many call me seafood, but to you I'm Seagung. And I produce masters. You surpassed us. Your kung fu stiffer than corpse and caskets. City Wing Chun is the house I built. Violate the gate and your blood gets spilt. Alex, Richter, always the victor.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, clap. All right, fantastical.
Typical hip hop. You can't even clap in time.
No.
Ever.
Yeah.
What?
Or put the
That
mic
was
at the
on
proper
time.
distance. I guarantee you that in the history of this world, there has been one gay horse named Dre.
100%.
So then I would look at the books, okay? All right. Are we recording still?
Oh, yeah. It's just that he was going to be speaking into the mic without realizing that the mic was actually, not
Got
on.
it.
All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be answering all sorts of hot nonsense from the Patreons. Lots of gems, lots of who's you're seeing, and just, damn it.
No. If his first take is too smooth at the beginning,
Amorous.
he'll always shit the bed on that landing.
Lots of gems, lots of
Who's you seeing?
Lots of man. Lots of gems, lots of who's you're seeing, and just a few amorous ninjas.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta get the lots of.
Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, brother!